Today we're doing something very special. We're doing some user-submitted oil paintings that I'm going to review to help people on their painting adventure. And we're getting started right now. Hey, it's me, it's Wild, coming at you from my Creative Control playlist where I bring you the best tips and tricks. But today, we're doing something very unique. I asked if people wanted me to actually review their paintings on a video. I'm dyslexic, so it's hard for me to critique people's paintings on Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit, but I love to do so, but it's challenging for me. So I asked a few people if they would feel comfortable submitting their art and having me review it. So this is going to be a good way for me to critique, give you feedback, hopefully direction. Some of these will be opinions and options that you can do, but hopefully it helps all of you watching and all of you that submitted on your painting adventure. So let's go over the computer and let's get started. Our first submission is from a Reddit user by the name of the392NX. And you know what? Overall, this is very good composition. A lot of the basics have been nailed, but I can see there are a couple issues and even some options I can give that'll make huge improvements on your painting. Let's start at the top of the painting. If we focus in just on the blue sky itself, you can see that the cross strokes have left a little bit of patchy marks. Now it's nice to have depth within your sky by having dark and light spots mixed in between, but this actually looks like you didn't apply enough liquid white and had a harder time pulling it down. Remember, when you use liquid white, you want to use a nice thin coat and then pull your pigment down towards the center of the horizon. And don't be afraid to blend it all out with a nice 2-inch brush. If we look at the clouds, your clouds have very good tops. They have fluffy crowns that have great direction that are moving in the wind. However, the bottoms kind of don't exist. We need to add more bottom heavy mist at the bottom there, so that way it looks like the clouds are kind of free floating. At the moment, your clouds kind of look like worms kind of scrolling around in the middle of the air, but this is easily fixable by taking your fan brush and just adding another row right below it and kind of flattening it out a little bit, and then taking a 2-inch brush and blending that down and out and giving it a little bit of a lift. Now, when this user submitted this piece of artwork to me, they let me know that they are left-handed, which shows that they're going to have a harder time adding highlight sides to the right side because it's against the way that their elbow, arm, and hand naturally flows. So for one big advice I'd give to you is flip the way that you do your painting. Put your highlights on the left-hand side since you're left-handed. That'll get you in a better flow and groove, and then put your shadows on the right side. As you can see for your mountains, you're going to have an extremely hard time doing the opposite. Yeah, you can do it, but it's kind of an advanced technique. So put your highlights on the left, shadows on the right, and that'll help out a lot. Since we're on the subject of mountains, the first set of mountains on the back right don't look that great. They don't have any jagged edges, and they actually curve in the wrong direction. They go down, out, and then down. When you should start at the top, they should kind of swoop down like a U, and feel free to add a few jagged points in there. Your mountain's a little too smooth. It almost looks like a dome. But the second row of mountains looks a lot better. If we can just get that paint to break a little bit as you come across smoothly, which again can probably be fixed by flipping the highlight side, you'll naturally get a lot of breaks. I've done 2 videos prior that I will put up in the top of the card. Feel free to reference and look at those. One's about how to improve actual mountain shapes, and the second one is how to get paint to break on a mountain. I recommend checking out both of those. Your mid-ground for your tree line looks great. The only thing I would say is adding a little bit of a mist line between the mountains that meet the tree line and a little bit of mist between the trees that meets the shoreline there. You can always pull that paint down and brush it across with a 2-inch brush, but you have beautiful water lines in the back there, so bravo on that. As we move even further closer, as we get towards our foreground, your bushes have awesome highlights. They look a little bit thin, like you put a little too much paint thinner on there, but it's hard for me to tell. I would recommend a 50-50 ratio of pigment to magic white will help you create beautiful shapes as you apply it. Same thing could be said for the pine trees on the left and right. Try making your trees a little narrow. When you start out as a painter, you kind of make your trees really, really fat. And it's hard because you don't understand how tree shapes should follow. So I'd recommend keeping it a little more thin. This way you'll have better control as you put highlights across it because they won't be as big as splats going on there. But all in all, your trees look fabulous. It's hard to give advice on what to do for a cabin because basically the only way to improve cabins is practice, 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 and eventually they will come together. So we're going to skip over that, but you have generally a good structure here for a weather-torn cabin. But the problem I have an issue with is the land that it kind of sits on. It's a mishmash of different colors and paints, and I understand what you're going for, but it looks like you were confused if you wanted it to be solid land, mossy grass, a mixture of hard rocks and everything. The problem is it creates this straight line that's on the side of the cabin that goes down. Land doesn't grow in a perfect line, so you shouldn't make it in a perfect line. I think if you made different layers in different planes, it would add a lot of depth to this cabin and the road itself. For one last note, and this is more of an opinion based upon how you like your paintings, I notice your water isn't that smooth, which can mean one of two things. Your canvas material probably doesn't have the best gesso application on it, so your liquid white or magic white is getting soaked in there like a sponge, and so when you put a layer on top of it, it creates very hard to do blending situations, which can be solved by putting another layer of gesso down. If that's not the problem, you didn't use enough magic white. Just add a little bit more magic white and that will blend down perfectly, creating smooth looking water and beautiful mirror-like reflections. I just want to say thank you for submitting this piece, and let's go on to our next one. Our next painting is submitted from a fellow Twitch watcher and also an Instagram user that posts his awesome work all the time. His name is Commander Z, and he did a very ambitious, strong, almighty mountain painting with some valleys, river, and an almighty waterfall. Let's take a look at the top and work our way down and see where improvements can be made. It looks like at the top you used a mixture of black and blue, which is a great type of sky to start with because it will naturally create darker corners and a darker top and go down into a very light gradient, creating a beautiful horizon line as it mixes with that magic white. The problem is it either looks like you didn't blend it well enough or there's not enough magic white down. As we can see on the right hand side, it gets a little blotchy and patchy a little bit there. So I'm going to assume not enough magic white. Get that rolling on there with a nice thin coat and pull it down naturally like we said in our first painting, and you will see a beautiful sky with a lot of depth in there. One big problem I see with your mountains is they are kind of all the same height. And I notice this a lot with people that start out painting in the beginning. Try making your mountains at different height. If you're gonna do 3, put all 3 at differently natural heights, and this will create a pleasing composition for your painting. The second biggest problem I noticed is you have some of your highlights on the right, but the mountain on the left has highlights on the opposite side, which would not happen because when the sun comes down, it's only illuminating one side. You have to pick where your sun is approaching from on your landscape and stick with it. Unless you're going for a sci-fi look, then it's okay. The other issue I have with the mountains is it's tough. When you're gonna use a shading color, you kind of get distracted with what you should be doing. It should be in the same tone of your mountain mixture that you put on your base, but it has to have enough separation. Obviously, your highlights have to be the brightest point, but your shadow side should actually be a mid-tone, while your mountain mixture color should be a dark base tone. This way, it gives it natural looking 3D appearance as it pops off. So I would pick a shade and tone and saturation color that's a little more in line for a natural shading look for this mountain. Since we mentioned the word composition, let's talk about it really quick. It's very hard to compose a well-balanced picture when you split it in half, and you're doing so by adding a river, an island, and a waterfall right down the very middle of your painting. Your balance is going to be thrown off by a lot of different elements. What I recommend is using a rule of thirds. If you had your river approach from the left or the right of your canvas and then approach the waterfall, which would be on the left or the right, you would have a much more balanced composition of a painting. which in turn creates better aesthetics for the people looking at it. And it's going to add actually a lot more depth and allow you to put more planes in there and structure your landscape much better. Not to say you can't split your landscape. You can. It's your painting. It's your world. This is just an opinion. And you'll notice if you try applying the rule of thirds, you'll see how much more structure your painting has and how much more balanced it is as well. If we move into the hills in the back here, I have a hard time knowing if they're rolling hills, moss grass, or tree lines you're trying to make. But I'm going to go with rolling hills for the most part. The issue is it's all flat. There's no layers separating each other. And to create layers that separate each other, you either have to have darker planes between the two or mist separating the two. Also, as things move closer, the tones, the values, and the saturation should get darker as it comes closer as well. For a beginning trick that I like to do, I actually like to cheat. You should have your back layer be light, then your next layer be a little darker, then your next layer be a little light, and your next layer be a little darker. This will create contrast. Even though it's not proper, it still helps you learn the mechanics of building layers on layers. And also, your river is the same width as it is in the far point as it is as it gets closer to us. Try making that a little smaller and you will see the depth perception in this painting increase tenfold. The trees that are laying in the foreground almost seem like fence posts. I have a video that I think will really help you out. Watch part 1 and part 2 of how to create happy little trees and learn the structure of tapping them in, down, and out. It takes a really long time, and I think trees are one of the hardest things to do. And I would recommend grouping them together because it would hide a lot more mistakes. When you spread them out, how you have 3 and 3, you make them look like posts and your eyes are very well centered towards looking at those because people like to look at things that are grouped in threes. It's the way the brain works. So I would cluster them closer together because if you make a mistake, you can hide it with a tree in front or behind it. But the way you have them spaced out, it's again not that well balanced. But you're doing really well. Since I've seen a couple of your paintings on Instagram before, you're getting a lot more of the mechanics and basics down. I would recommend do one painting that has almost nothing but trees in them, or get a spare piece of canvas paper and just literally practice 25 to 50 trees. And by the time you get to that 26th or 51st tree, you will be a master and you'll feel a lot more confident in it. One thing I do really appreciate you doing, this is a really cool painting. I love the mountains flowing down into the river, the rolling hills. I love the island in the middle. That's really cool. And I love the waterfall. Waterfalls are fun. They can be experimental because you can make them white watery. You can make them shiny and mirror. They can have beautiful sheens. Overall, your composition's great. I would just take a few of those structures about balance, the mountains and the highlights, the sky and the trees, and you will have a beautiful painting. So I actually have 2 more painting reviews that I need to do that I thought I could fit into this video, but I didn't realize how in-depth I was getting. But I actually like that because I feel like I'm hitting home with a lot of good valid points that's going to help a lot of these people grow. So I'm going to split this up into 2 parts. So for these 2 people, I'm going to split you guys into the next video. So stay tuned and hopefully you guys are really enjoying this because I'm going to give you more great advice. I just want to say thank you for all of the people that were kind enough to submit. And if you guys like this type of video and you want to submit your artwork, perhaps we do this maybe once a month. If you do like it, leave a comment below so I know. Maybe we'll start a hashtag for Twitter and Instagram, something like Wild Wet Reviews. If you want to submit your artwork, tag it that so that way I can look at it. I'll grab it and I'll do my best to make a video to help you out on your painting adventure. Hey, if you guys want to follow and help me out with this channel, make sure to subscribe and tick that bell. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to see me paint, I paint all the time on twitch.tv/wildforgames. And thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you all next time coming up in my creative control video coming up real soon. Take care. Peace.